Y'all know who y'all rocking with. It's your boy Rocky, that dark skin one. And it's time for us to tap into another episode of New York Steppers. Talk to me nice so you might not get to talk to me twice. You know the vibes. How my peoples doing out there, man? How my SIGs doing out there, man? How my real rights doing out there, man? How my 550s doing out there, man? Y'all know what we came to do. Had to do a little roll call, make sure everybody on the check-in, you heard. They say us gangsters don't die, we get chubby and get on YouTube, you heard? Okay, what's been going on these YouTube streets, man? What's new, man? Everybody still talking about this champ situation, this man. Oh no, hold on. Let's pause it. You see, I ain't really get into the champ situation. The stealing and shit like that. That shit ain't got nothing to do with nothing, you heard? But the Mav Hoffa situation, man. I tell people, man, you gotta be easy, bro. You gotta be smooth. You gotta watch what you're doing and you gotta watch the energy that you're putting in the world, because just like that, you can become content to the people that's looking to create, you heard? But nah, I don't think it's nothing cool about domestic violence, you heard? So, hopefully that situation, I ain't been following it too tough, but hopefully Math and them will figure out that situation, you heard? And get back to running it up, you know? It felt like once one thing went wrong, some train been going down. And that's all because he kept too many people around him. He tried to lift up too many people at the same time, and you can't do that, you heard? But y'all know the vibes. Y'all see the thumbnail, y'all see the title, y'all see this face. Y'all know what we do when we get here, you heard? It's time to cook up. Let's cook, you heard? Okay, gang, we back spinning those Queens blocks. American towers to be exact. Tonight we getting into the story of Jesse Brown, aka Joffy Top Tiger, aka Joffy the MAKK. Way before you had drill music, you had goon music in New York. Gritty with fly punchlines, but still treacherous at the same time. 50 Cent will single-handedly take the frequency of New York hip-hop from the melodic tempo bass sound that we led it to, back to the hardcore in-your-face bars that once laid the blueprint for rap. When 50 name get brought up, it's usually for a number of reasons. Power, preem, and drama within the G-Unit. Those of us that grew up during the DVD era would have bet our last dollar that G-Unit was going to be the next Rockefeller. And if not on the same level, then bigger. But unfortunately, us G-Unit fans would never see that because of issues. You heard? But we gonna take our time real fast to shout out 50. They say he just won a $1 billion lawsuit against some drug dealer for the Power series. That's a Billy. You heard? Boy just won $1 billion in court. 50 turning up. One of the most infamous stories that came out of the G-Unit camp at this time will be the story of Bangum Smurf getting kicked off the tour. This will lead to falling out between 50 Cent and his most trusted soldier, Bangum Smurf. What most don't mention, though, is Joffy will be kicked off the tour right along with Smurf. They both was two trigger-happy goons that could have been a downfall of 50 Cent before he truly got started. You see, Banga and Joffy was perfect for the G-Unit that was still in South Jamaica, Queens, selling crack to get out. But they wasn't good for the G-Unit that was a brand and now had powerful investors backing it. And so protecting the bag meant staying away from those that had jeopardized the bag. Many will say 50 was wrong for his decision, and that can be true. But when you're a boss, it's not about wrong or right. It's about making sure everybody got a plate at the end of the night. Coming up in the American tops, you had two choices. You was either going to be somebody or you was going to be nothing. Looking from the eyes of the youth, nobody cared about you when you had nothing. Joffy would decide at the age of 11 that he was going to be a somebody that the girls and the illest niggas in Queens would be checking for. Queens in the 90s and early 2000s was off the hook. I can actually say Queens is one of those boroughs that's most slept on, and that have a lot to do with how I look. When in Queens, most would mistake it for a suburban area until it's too late to realize that this is the same Queens that waged war on the NYPD during the crack era. Shout out to Pappy Mason. We definitely gonna be doing the New York Stompers, you heard? Pappy is definitely part of that roster, you heard? In 2004, Joffy would be doing a year on Rikers Island when he first became familiar with the MAKK Ballers, a subset of the New York Bloods that was established in the early 90s to fight against the oppression that was forced upon the black inmates by the Spanish gangs like the Latin Kings, to be exact. Joffy would turn MAKK, and when he was released, he would take the MAKK Baller movement back to the American Towers with him. At the time, the American Towers would have a roster filled with shooters and money getters. Names like Money Ron, Hove, CK, Murder, LO, and Uncle E. Joffy would attend Junior High 72. That was in the Ops Hood. And so they would be going at it with crews like the LBF, Baisley, and 134th. The damage would be done a decade earlier to Queens, and now the new generations was fighting for crumbs. The days of Fat Cat Supreme and war would be far gone, replaced with new breeds. Some whose parents got destroyed by the carnage that Supreme and them left behind. Joffy would go to school with Banks back in 72 days, and so the two had a solid friendship. When 50 would tell Banks to go holler at them to get down with G-Unit when it was first being formed. Getting down with 50 meant instantly becoming a target in Southside Jamaica. Early in his career, 50 would come out with a song called The Ghetto Born, where he'll name drop a lot of Queens hustlers and street figures. Personally, I think that's one of 50's best songs to date, but not everybody will agree with that. One person in particular would be Supreme. Kenneth Supreme McGriff, the leader of the Supreme team, was like a guard to the residents of Southside Jamaica, Queens, and the surrounding areas. Nobody in their right mind would try to get on his bad side but 50 Cent. Enduring the growing pains of never meeting his father and his mother getting killed and set on fire, 50 didn't give a fuck about Supreme's bad side. He actually had a chip on his shoulder, and he would use music to air it out. Preem was the businessman and Prince was the killer. Remember, he used to ride the bulletproof BM. Sit back to peep shit, my waves have... Woo! Chill. For those of y'all that don't remember or wasn't around or outside in that day, that was the infamous line that Preem had a problem with. It was nothing wrong with being a businessman, but by putting Prince and Preem against each other, made it sound like Preem wasn't as thorough as Prince was. And this could have been true due to the fact that Prince was Preem's uncle, but Supreme couldn't have the streets run with this notion. And so Preem will put out the narrative that 50 Cent was dry snitching in the song, and once Preem say it, Queen say it. Being that 50 was now into it with the boss of Baisley, it was only right that Joffy would join forces with him, because they too had issues with Baisley. At the time, 50 had already took 9 shots from a shooter that Preem hired. The shooter, whose name was Hamo, was a stick-up kid from Brooklyn and a street legend, who was best friends with Mike Tyson. Hamo also was shot a week after he shot 50, but he didn't survive. Word was already out about the beef between 50 and Preem, and so Joffy had a choice to stay neutral like everybody else did, but he didn't. He pledged his loyalty to G-Unit, and if you ever seen any of his interviews, especially the recent ones, you could tell he's still loyal to G-Unit. Banks would bring Joffy through to 50's grandmother's house, where he would chop it up with Bangum Smurf, and then solidify the Towers joining G-Unit with 50. Joffy and his crew would be boarding as muscle. Even after almost losing his life, 50 would stress to his team that they was going to put all their energy into music, and that's it. 50 was asking them to trust in his vision, and for the most part, they all did. Joffy would later admit that he didn't fully quit his street dealings. With a daughter to feed at home, he still will have to hustle on the side. Banks would boast to 50 about Joffy's operation once they was alone. Banks would go on and tell 50 how Joffy had 2 goons on security right in front of his building, taking mental notes of everybody that was coming and going, and the second checkpoint in the lobby where another shooter was stationed with a walkie-talkie in hand to communicate to Joffy who was coming up. This type of discipline was needed to build a team like G-Unit, 50 would reply. A few months later, 50 would drop the G-Unit is the future mixtape, and that was all she wrote. With 50's catchy hook, Banks' hard-hitting punchlines, and Yayo's grittiness, it was safe to say that the three main orphans would have the streets in a frenzy. So much so, they would go on their first tour off of mixtapes. Who remember those 50 Cent and Genius the Future days? That Banks workout. 50 being the musical genius that he was, he would take a hit song that other artists made, remix them with his style, add a verse from Banks and Yayo, and then feed it back to the streets. At the time, everybody was impressed with the guy that survived getting shot 9 times, and so they was buying whatever he was selling. 50 would have 3 buses while on tour, one for his family, one for his studio, and one for the goons that was there to protect him at all costs and make sure he was safe at all times. The only rule 50 would have is no fighting, no hustling, no embarrassing each other in front of these people from the label. For the most part, Joffy would honor the rules, but when you got a bus full of goons from the south side Jamaica, there was liable to be some bumps in the road. When you have a movement sort of like the G-Unit on tours where the homies from the hood meet the execs from the label, in Joffy's case on tour buses where all the problems started between him and Marcus, 50's tour manager. On a Queens Flip podcast, Joffy would go to say that him and Marcus would go at it on a few occasions, and he would always have to remind Marcus that he wasn't from the streets. Marcus would pick the last straw when he would start to press Joffy over a free Mitchell & Ness jersey that the company would send 50 in a unit with hopes that they'd wear it to get the free promotion. Marcus would misplace the jersey he picked for himself, and later he would see Joffy with it. Marcus would start to bark at him until Banger sidelined him. Joffy would follow it up and spank his boots. 50 would catch word and instantly kick all 3 off the tour. Joffy understood wholeheartedly why he was sent home and never held a grudge towards 50 for it. Joffy was his own boss in American Towers, and so the dream of going legit that 50 had, Joffy was willing to back it at all costs, even if it meant him being an example of what not to do. Biff would genuinely take a liking into Joffy, and so even though he would send him back to the hood, he never told him he was out of G-Unit. Instead, he kept him in position. Being back in the hood, Joffy would get on his fucking shit. He felt like a sucker for them to sucker trick him out of position. You get that? Y'all gotta watch all these suckers, because they be tricking real niggas out of position, I promise you. He would be back in the towers when he would look out the window and spot a group of cops huddling in front of his building. He would take his gun out and throw a shot in the air to scare them. He would then go downstairs and act like nothing happened. Putting 2 and 2 together, the cops would rush Joffy as soon as he walked out the building. Joffy would put up a fight and the residents from the towers would go out with him. But at the end of the brawl, Joffy would be in handcuffs on his way to Rikers Island until he got bailed out. Back in the hood put a huge target on Joffy and Smurf's head. And so Joffy had to keep his head on a swivel anytime he was in the hood. The ops knew what time it was too. On a Saturday night, Joffy would be out with some of the members. They would have the infamous bulletproof G-Unit truck that 50 bought the team, but Joffy would be in his own car. He and the 2 cars that was following him, they would be headed to Amazora to check the temperature. Mano was coming up at the time and he was set to perform, so the thugs and the ladies that loved him would be in attendance. Joffy was riding with Big Nick while Hov was driving a bulletproof with Money Ron riding shotgun, followed by some other members. Joffy would see Frenchie from Brick Squad in front of the club and holler at him while still in the car. The moment Joffy pulled off, 3 cars would box him in and start firing on him. Hov was now a few cars behind Joffy and couldn't do a thing fast enough to stop it. Joffy would get hit 5 times, twice in the chest, once in the hand, once in the buttocks, and once in the stomach. The only thing that truly saved Joffy was that he had his seat all the way back. Losing blood fast, Joffy would try to whip the car to Jamaica Hospital that was only a few blocks away. He would tell Nick, who was only shot in the leg, to switch seats and drive. Joffy would survive the shooting, but being that he wouldn't point out who shot him, the cops would trump up fake charges to take him off the streets. And hitting his stomach, Joffy would be put on a colostomy bag to help him remove his bowels. The judge would give him a year, and even though he did a bit up north already, nothing would be able to prepare him mentally for being in a place like Rikers Island on a shitbag. 50 and Banks would show up for Joffy in his time of need and make sure he was good. After doing the year, Joffy would be welcomed back home with a barbecue in his honor. All over Queens, the word spread it out about a G-Unit cookout, and everybody who was somebody would pop out. Everything would be going good until face fighting turned into shooting. And then everybody would start shooting, even Joffy's mother, who was a retired cop. This massive shooting would hit the news as somebody was shot in the neck and paralyzed from the waist down. Joffy and his mother and the venue owner will all get sued for breaking down that day. Today, you can find Joffy still grinding to be notarized as an MC. He maintained a tight relationship with 50 and the rest of the original G Unit members. If you want to look up that boy Joffy the MAKK, man, stay in tune with his music, his interviews, and all that. You can check out his Instagram page, Joffy the MAKK. Check out his Twitter page, his YouTube page. That's another hot episode down. You heard? We out of here.